Hi there, Natalie with you today with a new process video for all to new. And today I want to share an idea on how you can create a beautiful layout using the new kind reminders, stamp, die, and stencil. So join me. The new kind reminders stamp, stencil, and die set is one of the new releases from All to New, and it's a beautiful detailed flower that you can customize by using any of your best coloring techniques, or you can leave it black and white. It's so beautiful that it doesn't matter which way you go, you will get a great final product. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how I'm going to use the simple coloring stencil. So I'm starting with some Nina smooth cardstock for my flowers, and I'm going to use sand dunes ink to detail the flowers. I just want to create a soft background and a soft outline that is going to help me with setting everything in place, especially because the stencil, I want to make sure that everything lines up properly. So I'm going to give it like a really soft color ink that is going to help me guide. So what I'm doing right now is just stamping the two flowers that come in the stencil, which are the medium and the small ones. I'm going to say around 3 of the medium ones, and I stamp around 5 of the small ones, but I end up using only 3 or 4 of them. So once I have all my images stamped, I'm going to come in with the stencil, and all I'm doing right now is I'm just lining it up or setting it in place so that it matches the outline that I have already stamped. Once I have it in place, I'm going to add a little piece of washi tape just to hold it together, and you're going to see that I'm going to mask the area around the flower using post-it notes. I have tried different techniques to make sure that I don't get the ink kind of running outside of the flower and then getting mixed where the leaves are going to be set. And I found that using post-it notes, just because it's a larger surface, covers more of the area around it, so it doesn't destroy the flowers that are stamped next to it. So all I'm doing right now is bringing my ink blending tool, and I'm using actually rose petal collection to create the flowers. I'm going to use rose quartz just to add the first layer. So I've started with the outline of the flower. Once I set it in place, I'm going to come in with my ink blending tool. I'm going to kind of dab my ink blending tool on the ink pad, and then I'm going to go on a circular motion on top of the stencil, and that's going to create the impression of the outline or the solid area of the flower onto the page. Once I have that in place, I'm going to kind of move the stencil and just line up the second part, and that's why having that really soft stamp at the bottom is going to help me with kind of creating the rest of the details. So once I move the stencil in place, I'm gonna come in with a darker shade. In this case, this is Puffy Heart, and then again my ink blending tool, and I'm just gonna continue on a circular motion, creating the impression of the detail of the petals onto the flower. And then you're gonna see when I take off the post-its, you still see some of the lines, but it doesn't contaminate any of the areas of the flower. So then I'm gonna continue on working the leaves. One of the things that I should have recorded but I didn't, my apologies, is that I actually cleaned the stencil along the way. That way when I move it around, I don't drag ink around it, so I have a more of a crisp image of the flower. So I'm gonna just keep working with the flowers. I used, actually, this is green Meadows to create my leaves, so I'm using Minty Mint and Sweet Leaf. And for the flowers, I actually use shades of purple. Sorry, I'm talking about the ink cube sets. I use shades of purple. I use the red Cosmos set and the rose petal. I also use butternut ink just to create the centers of some of the flowers, and that's just to create the flowers. You're gonna see how simple it is to create it. If you have a chance, I know that the stamp is sold out at the moment, but it'll come back on restock. It's a beautiful stamp, and if you can get the stencil, go ahead. It makes the flower come together really easily. You can, like I said again, you can color it whichever way you like with your favorite method of coloring, but the stencil just creates a really soft look onto the flower. And that's one of the reasons that when I'm finished with detailing it using the stencil, I'm actually gonna go ahead and stamp the outline of the image, but I chose not to go with black. Instead, I'm gonna use mocha ink, and that's just gonna create a really soft look onto the flower. And because of the stenciling, you don't have, it just creates this really kind of diffused look on the flower. So having a softer ink just adds to the, I'm gonna say, the beauty of the flower. So again, I'm gonna take it off camera, continue coloring my flowers, and I'm gonna die cutting with the matching die set. So you're gonna see me, like I said, you're not gonna see this, but you're gonna see when I come back all the flowers that I work outside of the camera. And it took me no time. Like I said, working with the stencil does make this process go really fast and really easily. Another thing that I did outside the camera is I used the large floral image that comes in this set just to heat emboss 3 of them using gold antique embossing powder onto vellum. And I also pulled a picture of my kit just to create this layout. So I am starting with a white texture cardstock for this, and I'm bringing the woven stencil. This is one of the new stencils from Multinew. I love the linear look of it, and I have this idea that I want to kind of create a zigzag of flowers around the page. So I'm going to start by centering the stencil on the page, and I'm going to come in with the mixed media inks, and I'm using frayed leaf as the starting point for this. Again, I'm bringing my ink blending tool. I'm gonna dab my ink blending tool on the ink pad, and then I'm gonna go in a circular motion on the stencil. I'm gonna be very careful not to hit the edges of the stencil. I want to have just the center impression of the stencil. I want to avoid those harsh lines that that create the stencil. So one of the beauties of working with the linear stencil is that you can easily move them to kind of enlarge the area. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just moving the stencil and lining up the impression just to kind of create, you're gonna see like a soft S onto my page. Once I have everything nicely, I'm gonna come in with, this is Evergreen mixed media ink, and all I'm doing is I'm stamping it on a piece of acrylic. I'm gonna add a little bit of water just to dilute it, and then I'm gonna say kind of liquid watercolor in a way, just to add some splatters around the impression that I created. And then think about it, like I said, I want kind of a cascade, a zigzags around the picture. I'm gonna add just a few more splatters on the bottom of the page. While my background dries completely, I'm gonna go ahead and start working on the picture and kind of setting up what I have in mind. So I've pulled this paper from the 6x6 paper pad from the Enjoy the Ride collection, and I found that this green matches the green t-shirt that my son's wearing, so it's gonna make the picture kind of pop. And I added a bit of foam adhesive behind the picture just to make sure that it stands out on the layout. After that, it's gonna come to just building the clusters of florals, and I'm gonna combine one of the vellum flowers, one of the larger stencil flowers, and one of the smaller ones just to create the cluster. I'm starting with the vellum flower just because I want to add the softness of the bottom, and also because it's translucent. If I put it on top, then it's gonna cover the other flower and it's gonna look a little bit, you can see through it. So it's better to just kind of use it as the mat underneath the other flowers. So that's my idea. I'm adding some foam adhesive behind the flowers. That's gonna help me create a little bit of movement behind them, give the impression that there's different levels in the cluster. And then you're gonna see here that I'm actually, when I added my first cluster, I realized that when I added the vellum at the bottom, I kind of needed more of that vellum look just to expand throughout the entire cluster. So when I created my second cluster, I actually cut some of the leaves that were actually gonna be hidden by the bigger flower. I just make sure that it was like the part that was gonna be hidden, and it happened to be the leaves. So what I'm gonna do is, once I add my flowers, I'm gonna bring the leaves and kind of tuck them underneath the cluster, and that's just gonna create that impression that the vellum piece is longer than what it really is. Again, just to tie the paper and everything together, and just to elongate the layout, I'm actually going to create a small cluster at the bottom, following the same idea that I have on the ones above. So for that, I've cut a 1/2 inch strip of the 12 by 12 paper from the Enjoy the Ride collection that matches the one that I backed the picture with, and I'm gonna glue it at the bottom of my layout. I'm gonna go ahead and create a cluster again using the same flowers, but this time I'm actually going to just trim them so that they look like they're coming from underneath the paper. And whatever pieces that I have left over, especially of the vellum, I'm gonna use it to help me create that idea on the top left corner of the layout, where I have the first cluster. Whatever's left over of the vellum, I'm actually gonna use it there to help me create the impression of a kind of a longer or a larger vellum piece. Once I have that in place, it was super simple. I don't want to add that many more embellishments, just because I think the flowers are doing quite a bit of the work. So just for my title, I'm using one of the chipboard stickers from the Enjoy the Ride collection. I use this butterfly, it's from the Red Collections collection, and then I'm just going to add a few stickers from my stash and a little puffy heart. And just to finish, because I have that gold embossing on the leaves, on the flowers, I'm bringing a little bit of the Altenew Antique Gold Metallic Ink Spray and just adding a few splatters around the page. That's about it. I added my lines to journal right underneath the picture, but that's all it took to complete this layout. I love how this turned out. It took no time to put together, very easy, and I hope you try it. As always, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. You can check the blog for more details, and thank you so much for joining me. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because there's always lots of content being added. Take care, guys.
Hello crafters, Jen here. For more tips, techniques, tutorials, and to discover which paper crafting products are right for you, subscribe to Altenew's YouTube channel. Make sure to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. Thanks for watching.